Well, listen, from the shores of the North Saskatchewan River, right here in scenic Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, this is the man, the myth, the legend himself, me, myself, and I, Jack Antonio. And you are listening to Do You Know Jack, the podcast. And on the line with me today, I have the one and only Marcus Xavier Plog. Is it Marcus? Seems like you should be a.
It's just Mark.
It
Mark.
seems like you should be a Marcus with the middle name Xavier. It sounds like Marcus is sort of but I will respect the Mark. It's Mark Xavier Plog, real estate agent by day, but satanic metal god by night. Do I sort of have it pinned down there, Mark, or what?
Yes, I do have my real estate license. I'm also a civil engineer and land surveyor.
Wow, so you're highly qualified in the real world. I mean, I guess, just to kick things off, given the situation and scenario that we're in right now, I would imagine now with what you do as a real estate broker that things probably have fallen on a little hard times with COVID-19, eh?
Yeah, I'm sitting at home like most people in the Seattle area, writing songs actually mostly, but doing a little bit of work where I can.
Now, no offense, but Mark, I mean, you're of course, the guitarist of an, I guess for lack of a better word, an up and coming band, right? I mean, you guys only started in 2014. Do I have my information correct here?
Actually, we started the band in 2017, and we just finished our first album and released it this year.
Right.
So we're barely started.
Yeah. Now, you're a little long in the tooth, so I would imagine that there was things going on in your own musical life beforehand. Like, just walk me through the process here, as to how the whole Rivetskull thing came about, good sir.
Well, for me, I have been a musician and been playing in bands since I was in high school, which was a long time ago. My initial musical foray into original bands and stuff was back in the 80s in Houston, Texas. I played in a lot of the clubs there, and we did shows with cool people like the guys from Pantera before they had Phil, and we had did shows with Hellstar and King's X and people like that were all kind of big in Houston at the time.
Right.
And then after that, I kind of, I did that for several years, and then I kind of, went on and had continued my life for a while and had kids.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got back into it about 10 years ago, actually with Chad and Michael that are in Rivetskull. We got involved in a Ronnie James Dio tribute band. And we did that for several years, and we toured all over the place doing that. We've even been to Ireland and the UK and a lot of other places doing that because we honestly did a pretty darn good job of it. It was called Rising, was the name of the band, but that was kind of the culmination of our sort of heavy metal roots. That's we all kind of grew up on that music, and it was just such a joy to play. And Rivetskull I've always wanted to do. I just, never really found the guys until we did that for a while, and then we were kind of like, we're kind of tired of that. And everybody has other bands that they do. I mean, everybody in this band is in other bands.
Right.
But this is our main original project, and Chad still does. He actually plays John Paul Jones in the Zeppelin tribute that travels all over the world. He was in Australia twice this last year, and he's very musically adept at just about everything he touches. So we've got a lot of people like that in the band, and this is kind of our all coming together and doing what is kind of what we love.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I did notice now that you guys are from Seattle, but you coming from Texas kind of explains, probably how you managed to leapfrog over the the elephant in the room, which is grunge.
Yeah, no, I was never a grunge guy. That I kind of missed that whole thing. I got to Seattle after grunge kind of came and went. So I didn't kind of get too deep into that scene, and Chad was never a grunge guy so much, although, I know that he knew the guys from Soundgarden really well personally, and still hangs out with Ben Shepherd all the time. But he wasn't really into grunge. He was more a progressive kind of guy.
Yeah.
The drummer Michael used to live with half of the guys in Pearl Jam, but he was never into grunge either. He was more into punk and stuff like that. And then the bass player Mark, he grew up in Bellevue with all the guys from Queensryche.
Oh wow.
So he was more of a metalhead. So we all kind of, even though half of the band was from this area, nobody was really into grunge. Oddly enough.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up just across the line in a little town called Chilliwack in British Columbia, Canada. But I mean, a stone's throw from Vancouver, and I know in Vancouver in the 90s, I mean, the grunge thing was pretty, heavy and going on. I guess I've always been curious. I mean, with Seattle, like, is that whole grunge culture still kind of permeating through everything, or is it pretty much, a bygone era at this point?
It's still got a little bit of its roots here. There's still, you'd probably call it more sort of alternatives now, right? In Seattle than grunge. There's definitely a big alternative scene here, and that's still thriving to some extent. But metal's pretty big here too now, which is awesome. We have a lot of decent metal bands.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, you did mention that Queensryche is from the area, which, I think a lot of people don't even realize until they, take a deeper plunge into the history of the band. Yeah.
And most of the guys still live here in this area, and, you see them around. In fact, Chad's vocal teacher is the same guy that taught Jeff Tate. So,
wow.
They both had the same vocal coach, and most of the musicians around here, like I think Lane Staley also used them, and like the Hart Sisters. So it's a very small community, even though it's a fairly big city. Everybody that was in Seattle and is in Seattle kind of knows each other to some extent.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. I mean, that's bound to happen. I mean, that's how, the whole magic of the grunge scene came about to begin with, is it was basically just a bunch of dudes going to each other's shows. I would imagine now, like, it's similar with the metal. It's similar with the metal scene that you're describing. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's very much, everybody knows everybody, and it's very, friendly and supportive.
Sure.
Which is nice. It wasn't like that in Houston when I was younger.
Yeah.
Houston was very, everybody was kind of out for themselves.
Yeah. Well, now, just bringing things around here, your record Trail of Souls, independently released February 7th. This is a kind of like a DIY thing. So, I mean, where'd you record it? You self-produce, like, walk us through the process here, Mark.
Well, we recorded it all ourselves. We all have our own home studios.
Uh-huh.
So it's all recorded by ourselves. The production was mostly myself and Chad. Chad lives in LA actually now. But he did a lot of the production there, and then we had it mastered by now his name's slipping my brain. But a guy down there that he knows that mastered the latest Heather album, and he did Slayer album as well, or I can't remember which one, but I think it was God Hates Us All or something. But anyway, that's pretty much the only pro help we had was on the mastering. Everything else we kind of did DIY.
Right. So, like, what were some of the challenges then of working through a process, to not have a producer that could potentially put the brakes on things when they're going in the wrong direction, or, trim the fat, as it were?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess we kind of did it naturally. It wasn't that difficult. Chad has a good sense for that. He owns a recording studio here in Seattle as well as a music venue.
Nice.
And so he's done a lot of mixing and recording and that sort of stuff. So he has a good ear for that. He's definitely kind of got that producer hat on, and does a good job of it. And we come up with an idea, and he always, slices and dices it. We're all kind of just go along with that. And we like the way it turns out. I like the way he does things. So we're
Yeah.
all pretty satisfied with how things go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's fair. That's fair. And looking at the record specifically, I mean, tone wise and sound wise, I mean, you could probably say this about a lot of guitar players, Mark, but I mean, you obviously worship at the altar of Tony Iommi.
Yeah, no, I grew up on classic metal for the most part, and Iommi's definitely one of them. My sound is probably a little cleaner but heavier than a lot of modern metal sound.
Right.
But I like that. It gives it a lot of bite and body. It's not thin. It makes it harder to do solos, but I kind of like that. It's a struggle for you when you're playing it fairly clean.
Right.
But yeah, definitely Iommi is a big influence on myself, and I grew up listening to stuff besides that. Actually, a lot of Aerosmith. I loved Aerosmith when I was younger. Jethro Tull. A lot of different bands that I really liked that you wouldn't really consider metal, but they're kind of part of who I am too.
Yeah. Now, just thinking about some of the tracks on this record, like Another Way to Heaven, for instance, and I mean, you guys did mention that for a while, a couple of you played in a Dio tribute act, so I mean, this shouldn't come as any surprise, but I mean, I'm detecting a pretty heavy, Dehumanizer era Sabbath with maybe the soloing touch of a, Seventh Star era Iommi.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, obviously that's your influences come through, and when you just let yourself play what's inside you, that's all going to come out.
Yeah.
Another Way to Heaven for us was one of the first songs we kind of put together when we decided to do this band.
Yeah.
And it kind of, we just let it kind of hang out there. It was like, okay, this is our first letting it come out of ourselves naturally. And then things got a little more, odd from there, I suppose. But that one's a fairly straightforward kind of metal tune.
Yeah. Now, like, is Dehumanizer an album in your personal collection that you pull out and dust off and listen to from time to time?
Yeah, no, that's a great album. When we did the tribute thing, we played songs off that album. We played I, for example.
Oh, that's a great track.
Which is, I absolutely love that song. But there's obviously that's to me that was a sort of a break from the early Sabbath to where he was doing more kind of straight metal feel to it. Some of the older Sabbath stuff didn't quite have that same feel, but Dehumanizer was an album all unto itself.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like, if you look at that initial Dio offering with Heaven and Hell, for instance, I mean, you see a very progressive and almost jazzy Tony Iommi, like in one spot in particular, I think in Lonely Is the Word, he's doing this neat little octave chord soloing thing that I don't think he pulled out a lot of that stuff during the, the 70s and the Aussie years. And all of a sudden you hear that aspect of his playing come through, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I think that comes from their roots, right? That's kind of where they all started in music, was sort of heavy blues, jazzy stuff.
Yeah.
And they translated into what they did. And, even Bill Ward's drumming is very jazzy.
Yeah, that's true.
It's what gives him that unique feel. Is it's just a little different approach than a metal drummer would take to those songs.
Yeah,
and it makes it unique, right? So you let your influences come through, and then you do your thing to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting looking at the eras of Sabbath because, of course, Vinny Appice is a completely different drummer than Bill, and when he stepped into the fold, they sonically took on a completely different sound and style. And I'm definitely hearing in Michael's drumming a bit more Appice than Ward.
Yes. He absolutely loves Bill Ward, but I would say his drumming is a little bit more like Vinny.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of Bill Ward's style, but it's what comes naturally to him is probably closer to Vinny.
Yeah, yeah. Bill is, you hear a lot of jazz and swing and a bit of a swagger in Bill's playing,
Hmm.
whereas Vinny is more worshiping at the altar of Bonham with that kind of heavy, straightforward sound and style. I mean, Vinny is very much a drummer all to himself as well. I mean, he's not exactly a Bonham copycat.
Yeah, no, and one of the things that Michael always tells me about why he likes that guy's drumming is that it always feels like he's about to fall off, and he just brings it back.
Yeah,
It's how Michael describes it. He's like, you're playing kind of at this edge where things are about to fall apart, but then you don't let them.
yeah.
And I can kind of hear that after he explained it to me, but that's kind of how he describes that.
You mean with Bill Ward?
No, with Vinny.
Oh, with Vinny.
It's like his drum. Yeah, his drum fills feel like they're not going to land in the right spot, but they do. Because it's like the timing almost changes a little bit during the fills. It's hard for me to explain, but after I've listened to it a few times, I get what he's saying.
I'm gonna have to go back now and listen to a bunch of Vinny's playing just to pick up on that.
Yeah, listen to a couple of the Dio records when he does fills and stuff. It feels like he's crashing, but then he catches it right into the song.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Sabbath was that those guys, the three of them, Ozzy aside, were sort of virtuoso musicians in their own right. They're sort of a very, very poor man's copy of Cream. Of course, Iommi's never going to play like Clapton, but I mean, he doesn't have to, right? I mean, those guys were literally pioneering a genre. But then when you add Appice into the mix, that Appice is more of a sideman type guy. He's not really super out there with his playing.
Right. No, I get that too. Yeah. Yeah. Your point about the Iommi's playing. It's very distinctive. It's not highly skilled, but that's the point. Is that he's doing what feels right to him, and it comes across in the music.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like not everybody has to be a Yngwie Malmsteen in order to be impressive as a guitar player or a drummer or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
It's whether or not you're true to yourself and that fits with what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. Now, you guys just recently dropped the video for your track Narcissus, and of course, there's quite a lot of stock footage of Il Duce himself. I mean, I know there's an explanation of the lyrics of the song and sort of what you're getting at here, but, run that down for us again now that we're, recording and, we've got that captive audience of people that are listening to this right now.
Well, really what that song's about is the dangers of a narcissistic person and how far they can go, and how far they can screw things up for the people around them. Narcissists aren't always, world leaders and, bad people like that. But the song's generally about, how a narcissist takes control of the people around them and the world around them, and causes bad things to happen even with good people.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what that's about. And that's kind of what Mussolini did, right? He took a hold of a whole country of people, and, we've seen that in several different cases around the world, whether it was Hitler or anybody. They're all narcissists.
Right.
And they all love themselves, and they cause people to, they convince people to do bad things. And, that's basically what that's all about.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we're living in a bit of a timely era, and given the fact that you're, living in Washington State, which seems to be a state right now that's a little on the outs with your own fearless leader, the track is sort of dropping maybe at just the right time.
Well, obviously we're hinting at that, right? I mean, he quoted Mussolini once, which freaked us all out. And we actually put that quote at the beginning of the video where, Mussolini made the quote, and then the exact same quote was, done again by our own president.
Right.
And, I don't think he's as bad as Mussolini. Could he be? Yeah, I suppose. It could go that far, but I would like to think that people are more connected and aware these days to where that there's bumper rails to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, I don't believe. Not in any kind of a democracy, maybe in a dictatorship, it would still happen, right? But the point is that people try that have that personality disorder can cause bad things to happen, even if it doesn't go as far as Mussolini.
Yeah, yeah. That's fair. That's fair. The very next. Well, now, like, I mean, I detect maybe a little hint of an Alice in Chains influence on this one. I mean, am I just trying to read into it, given the fact that you guys are from the Puget Sound area, or?
That's I'm not trying to think of where you would hear that in that song, but we do like Alice in Chains. I mean, that's probably one of the sort of grungy, not grungy bands that we all really like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody said they were grunge, but to me they weren't. But the, probably the vocal styling on that is a little bit, would remind me of that a little bit.
Yeah, the vocal harmonies,
and the way Chad did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably where that comes from. And again, here you go, Chad's had the same vocal coach as Lane Staley had, so he may have picked that up there.
But now I thought like Crash and Burn that comes right after that on the record, it almost you're almost shredding with a bit of a Kim Thayil approach, and that would be a little bit more Soundgarden-y. And I mean, and then there again is a band that you could argue maybe might be the quote unquote fathers of grunge, but they also have a bit more of a metal leaning, and they have that Sabbath influence on them throughout their discography.
Yeah, no, that I could see that. The Crash and Burn for us is kind of it was just kind of fun. It felt kind of punky.
Yeah.
To us, and I'm a big punk fan, but we just wanted to do something kind of fun. Metal can be kind of serious all the time, and that song's not so serious, but certainly we've been around the guys in Soundgarden a bunch, and we all listen to Soundgarden. So enough. It's totally possible that influence would come out for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now the record is called Trail of Souls. It is by Rivetskull. It released February 7th. And I mean, the whole arts and music community is kind of on hold right now. But I mean, given the fact that you've, got this record on the go, I mean, what's the next step for you guys? You mentioned that you're sort of writing. So I would imagine there's a little bit of material going back and forth right now.
Yeah, we were hoping to get out there and do shows and tour a little. But obviously that's come to a grinding halt. So in the meantime, we're writing, and there's a good chance we'll have another album out before we ever get to tour again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our plan for right now, is to work on getting some more music out there.
Right.
And then as soon as we can, we'd like to get out there and start doing some shows and doing some tours or festivals or something.
Yeah.
And we just love to play, and we love writing too. So we're in the best place right now because we can write without any pressures to do other things. That's
true. Yeah. Well, now where's the best place to go to find out all things Rivetskull? I know you've got a website and a reasonably active Facebook page.
Yeah, you can find us on our Facebook, which all of our social media apps and everything else are Rivetskull, whether it's Facebook /Rivetskull, YouTube /Rivetskull, our website's rivetskull.com, you name it, you can find us. We're pretty easy to find.
Right on, man. Well, listen, Mark, I mean, I've really appreciated chatting with you today, man. It's always fun to talk to, like-minded people such as yourself. I've been worshiping at the altar of Sabbath and Dio for a really long time. And, I like all eras of Sabbath, I even like the Born Again record. I mean, that's how crazy I am.
Mm-hmm. No, I actually like that album. It wasn't produced all that great, but the music's great.
Yeah. Well, then I could talk about the production of that too. I think in Iommi's autobiography, he mentioned that they forgot to rig something up that caused the sound to be really crappy. And I don't know. It's a great record all the same, and it still has Geezer playing on it. And I think Bill Ward is on there. I'm not sure if he actually played on the record or if he's just on there a name, or if they maybe dragged him out of rehab just long enough to play on the record and then put him back in there again. I'm not sure how that works, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I like every era of the band, and from what it sounds like, so do you. So it's been great chatting with you today, man. Much appreciated.
You too, Jack. You take care of yourself.
Right on. The band is Rivetskull, as I said. Trail of Souls, released February 7th. Get it, in the flesh, or check it out on your favorite streaming service. Have a good one, man.
Thanks, man. Take care.